good morning and good evening to some of you. My name is Lawrence Lee. I am the Senior Product Manager for our camera portfolio here at Avigilon. Joining me today, as Phil mentioned, are a couple of other Senior Product Managers, Terry Dankel, who's our Senior Product Manager for Analytics, and Chris Weston, a Senior Product Manager for Avigilon Control Center. So today we are very pleased and excited to go through details of our new H5A camera line. Its new features, especially its very exciting next generation analytics capabilities. And then we'll talk about the ACC 7.2 matching features that go with that camera, as well as unrelated but also equally important new features we're adding in 7.2. So the H5A camera line represents our latest update to our flagship camera line. The exciting new feature here is that now with new hardware, it supports the next generation analytics engine, which is a neural networks-based engine, and Terry will go over that in a bit more detail. But the really critical, important part here is, as you can see on the right, this is a live shot from a camera, is now capable of picking up far more targets in a very busy scene, and it can actually run all of those analytic rules that we have today on that scene. So that's a very exciting new feature here. In addition, because we now have new hardware, we've added H.265 support on HDSM smart codec technology. And because of the all new hardware and our confidence in our made in North America manufacturing, we are now providing a standard 5-year warranty on this camera line when you buy it from Avigilon. All right, and as a side effect of updating all of the hardware, the image quality has been improved here in both IR distances and the wide dynamic range performance in almost all the variants. What we've done here is we've chosen to keep the industrial design the same as the H4A, so this makes it extremely easy for people to transition from our H4A flagship line to this. So it's exactly the same accessories. Whatever you have planned right now for your installations, you can just switch them over seamlessly here. And following on the heels of H4A, we are going to make these cameras also Profile S and Profile T compliant. And one of the other hardware improvements we've made along the way is to also get IP67 rating for all the outdoor cameras, as well as pushing the maximum operating temperature up to 65 degrees. Okay. Here's a quick overview of the key differences in the camera line. Of note is that we are dropping the 1 megapixel at the lowest end. We're now focusing on 2 and up. And as I mentioned, 5-year warranty, IP67, and the new analytic engines are the key differentiators here. In terms of lenses and available performance, it's fairly similar set of lenses. So you have a wide angle zoom, a narrower 9-22, and still the same 5 to 85 millimeter lens in the box camera. The 5 megapixel we've only kept for certain 9-22 millimeter bullets or outdoor domes. In general, basically we're focusing on 2, 4, 6, and 8 megapixels on this line. In terms of IR distances, because we've updated the hardware, we've redesigned the IR illuminators, we are able to push the IR illumination distance on virtually all of our variants here. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to Terry Dankel to talk about our new next generation analytics.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. So our next generation analytics takes advantage of the latest AI technology by putting a CNN on the camera. CNNs, or convolutional neural networks, are very effective in image recognition and classification. These computer networks are inspired by the way the human brain processes information. They're set up in layers with many connected parts like neurons in the human brain. They require a lot of processing power and data to train them to make decisions. However, the technology does not do this by itself. It is a tool that the computer vision experts that we have on staff use, and they're using this to train the CNN to apply this power specifically for the security industry. The CNN on the H5A will undergo continuous improvements and enhancements, and these will be available with firmware updates. The analytics on the H5A have been best in class, or sorry, the analytics on the H4A have been best in class. They use background modeling to distinguish moving objects and then match those objects against known patterns of people and vehicles. They adapt to scene changes, and they're good for perimeter detection, but have challenges in crowds and in poor lighting. So using the latest technology, we've updated on the H5A to use deep learning CNN technology to recognize objects. And this expands the type and the number of objects. It recognizes both stationary and moving objects. And there are different networks for day and night, so they can be trained differently for better performance. And the platform can be extended with future enhancements. So not only can the H5A analytics provide a better perimeter detection, but H5A analytics will provide better performance in crowded environments, both indoors and out. As Lauren showed you, you see many more objects classified and tracked in a crowded scene, over 50, and the analytics can discriminate people in a crowd and those partially obstructed, and that makes for an improved appearance search since now all the objects in the scene are included for comparison. There are more classifications. So in addition to people and vehicles, the analytics classify car, truck, bus, motorcycle, and bicycle. When Chris presents ACC updates, he will talk more about how these are used in ACC. H5A also has higher accuracy, which means that fewer objects are missed and there are fewer improperly classified objects. Detection speed is almost immediate. Stationary objects are detected in addition to moving objects. And there is improved face detection, which means that more faces are detected. And this gives us the ability to increase the accuracy of appearance search because people can be found even if they change clothes based on their face appearance, and it provides a platform on which to build future face applications. So the same 9 analytic event configurations are supported as on previous analytic cameras. However, improved stationary object tracking will improve object loitering and object stops in area rules. Event configurations work as they did before, so the next generation analytics will ignore stationary objects when the video analytic event is created. So this means that when an object and area event is created and the field of view has a parked car in it, it will be ignored. Only cars that move into the area will trigger the event. This is just how it worked for H4A. For object loitering rule, if an object will not be monitored until it moves into the area and then stops, then the timer will begin. So the only exception to this is object not present in area rule. Obviously, this will pay attention to any objects in the area from the start of the configuration, either those moving or stationary. So basically it works, the rules work like they did in H4A. Lastly, the analytic events are configured for people and vehicles, or people and vehicle classes, just as they are today. So analytic modes, H5A simplifies those to 2 modes, have outdoor, which classifies both vehicles and people, and indoor, which classifies only people. 2 modes that exist on previous analytic cameras do not exist. Indoor overhead, the analytics have not been trained for a top-down view, but for security camera mountings, and high sensitivity because the analytics are more accurate, so this is no longer needed. Unusual motion detection will be replaced by unusual activity detection. So H5A will detect people and vehicles that are acting in unusual ways, not just unusual motion that is not tied to a classified object. So the H5A camera will learn the scene and notify when unusual activities that it has been trained for exist. The first unusual activities that will be delivered will be unusual speed of people and vehicles and unusual presence of people and vehicles. So this will be available on H5A with a future firmware update and corresponding ACC software update. And this will be able to run at the same time as classified object analytics. So it will be, you will have unusual activity detection and classified object detection. So what's the same across H4A and H5A analytics? Installation. And so the design guide, the designing a site with video analytics still holds. The same recommended mounting heights and angles. The guide has been updated, but essentially it's mostly the same. A self-learning or auto-calibration. So just like H4A, the H5A learns the scene to reduce false positives, and it takes approximately 10 minutes in scenes with activities. Teach by example for people or vehicles is still an option to teach the camera, and detection distance or range is the same. So the next generation analytics, as we said, can classify and recognize more objects, and it has approximately 5 times more detections, so it is natural that it will have more false positives as well. Just like with H4A, behavior can be modified by adjusting sensitivity, by setting an exclusion area in an analytic event configuration if there are intermittent false positives, or by using teach by example for more lingering false positives. And as always, a reminder, always reset self-learning if the camera field of view is changed or if you move the camera around. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lawrence to go through some camera details.
All right, thanks, Terry. So some more details on the cameras themselves before we turn it over to Chris on ACC. So as I mentioned already, we have a completely updated imaging pipeline. It will improve the overall image quality, especially at the higher megapixel resolutions over the H4A. We have newly designed IR illuminators. It does give us greater distance performance at the same power consumption that we've had before. And we now added HDSM2O support to every resolution except for the 2. So basically 4, 6, and 8 megapixels all support HDSM2O when used with ACC. In terms of the aspect ratios, there are a couple of variants that I like to call out. So for the 4 megapixel and 5 megapixel, there are a couple of aspect ratio options. So you could either run these cameras in 16:9 mode, which gets you to crop out the sky in the foreground, or you can run them in 3:2 or 4:3 mode, which gives you a taller field of view coverage. So when we removed the 3 megapixel from the H4A line, one of the qualities of that was the 3 megapixel had a taller vertical field of view compared to, say, the 2 megapixel. So using the 4 megapixel in this 3:2 mode gets you back to the same kind of coverage that you had before. All right, environmental rating. We pushed the bullets and outdoor cameras up to 65 degrees with a little bit of convection, natural convection. If you do seal it up in a box, then it'll hit 60 degrees as well, which is still pretty good. And then, as I mentioned before, the IP66 and IP67 rating for outdoor domes and bullets. For third-party VMS support, if you're not using this with ACC, then we are following the similar philosophy as we do with the H4A. So first, we start with our on-with profile S and T compliance. So if your third-party VMS supports those, then chances are very good it will work as a camera. Next up, if you're interested in the analytics, we will send the bounding boxes and the events over ONVIF like we do today on the H4A. The subclasses that Terry talked about won't be sent over. Instead, all of those bounding boxes will be marked as vehicle only. And again, like the H4A, you'll do all the analytic configuration using the camera configuration tool. And as this project gets closer and closer to being final, we will do testing and certification with third-party VMS. And you should start seeing support for this camera listed on some third-party VMSs. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass things over to Chris Weston, who will talk about ACC 7.2.
Thank you, Lawrence. All right, so first of all, let's talk about ACC and H5A support. Okay, so first of all, we are supporting the H5A cameras in both ACC 7 and ACC 6. In terms of the version recommendations, the minimum version we recommend is 7.2, which will be coming out very shortly here for ACC 7. And if you're running ACC 6, it'll be in the upcoming service release ACC 6.14.10, also available very shortly here. The vehicle subclasses that were previously mentioned, those are only available for ACC 7. So if you're running ACC 6, they're just treated as vehicles. There's no subclasses, and we'll talk about exactly what supports there in a few slides. And then in terms of the overlay settings, you see bounding boxes for all objects in ACC 6, whereas in ACC 7 we give you a couple different options, and I'll talk about that in a slide as well. Okay, so in terms of the subtypes, they're available in the following places. So in our motion search feature, when you have the option for an analytics camera to search classified object motion, now you can specify the types of objects that you're interested in. So you get people, vehicles, and then for vehicles you could choose, maybe I'm only interested in certain subtypes. And so there's 5 of them here: car, truck, bus, motorcycle, and bicycle. They also show up in live and recorded video when you hover over the ACC 7 bounding boxes. You can see in that top right image, I was hovering over the lower bounding box. It's showing that's a bicycle that's detected. There's 2 boxes there because it's actually detecting that there's a person on that bike as well. I will note that these subtypes are not available in the analytic event configuration, so you can't create rule actions or alarms based on the subtypes. You would choose to just specify the vehicle class if that's what you're interested in. So basically, search and analytic overlays is where you see these subtypes. So in terms of the analytic overlay settings that I touched on a couple slides ago, we wanted to give a new option for live video due to the fact that with H5As there's a lot more bounding boxes, up to 50 as Terry mentioned, and in addition we're also detecting stationary objects. So we have the existing video analytics activity overlay setting available in the client there. So that still controls whether or not you see bounding boxes in live and recorded video for any analytics camera. But then if you do have that setting enabled, you now get a further ability to customize the behavior for live video. So there's 3 settings there. You could basically choose to turn it off, which would mean you would see the bounding boxes on recorded video, but not live video for any cameras. There's a motion only setting, which basically for H5A cameras will only show the bounding boxes if the object is moving. Stationary objects will not show a bounding box on live video. For our older cameras, such as the H5A with self-learning analytics, all classified objects would show a bounding box if you choose that setting. And then the last setting, it's, as you would assume, you see the boxes all of the time, whether they're stationary or moving. Okay. So let's talk about appearance search. We have updated our appearance search technology to support a descriptive search for vehicles. So you are able to do 2 things. You can specify the vehicle color that you're interested in, and you can see the available color options there. And then you can also specify the vehicle category. So these are the same as vehicle subtypes, but I do want to clarify that these appearance search options are available for all of our analytic cameras. So that would be on the H5As, or if you have H4As, H3As, or even cameras connected to our AI appliance. So basically, the the classification of these subtypes for appearance search. This is done using the analytics service, which is how we're able to deliver these for all of our analytic cameras. Whereas the overlay settings and the search options available in motion search, that's actually delivered by the classifications from the CNN at the edge on H5A cameras. So hopefully that clears up any confusion, but basically the appearance search update, it's available for all analytic cameras. Okay, so what else is in 7.2? We covered all the features related to H5A support, but there's a couple other important additions here as well. So first of all, we've completely redesigned the video exporting workflow. As many of you are probably aware, our previous export workflow was a little limited in that, you know, you could be in a search screen, for example, and choose to bring an event into the export tab. But really, if you wanted to add any other segments of video or customize it, you would have to go and redefine all of those video clips, you know, specifying the cameras and the duration. So it was a lot of work to compile and export. Now we've tried to make it so that from all the different places in ACC, whether it's the various search tools or even the recorded timeline itself, you can choose to export a segment of video. That basically gets brought into a queue or like a shopping cart. You can think of that same paradigm. And then really the user can do all that work, and then when they're ready to finalize the export, to actually create the export file, you know, they have the full control to bring those segments of video together, maybe to determine whether they should go in separate export files. They can manage all of that and choose to export it all at once. So it's a really nice overhaul to this feature. So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. So you still have the ability from the export UI to actually define those exports and the clips that are associated with them. So we didn't want to remove that, but generally, as I said, that should no longer be necessary. You can do all the work elsewhere in ACC when you're actually looking at the relevant video. For the individual exports, you have the option to export multiple ones at once, and I'll show you that in a slide here. You can also choose to remove exports, and this is all done by basically selecting them from the list. You check them off using the checkboxes, and then choose the action you're interested in. A couple other exciting, or one other exciting addition here. So, you know, you may have the case where you've just completed an export and you realize, oh, I forgot, you know, a particular camera or a clip that I needed as part of this. Now, as long as you still have the client open for the same session, you can go back and basically re-add an export that you just completed back to the queue, change the settings easily, you know, maybe add that one additional camera, finalize it again, and quickly export it without having to go through all the work to recreate it. So that's a really nice enhancement. That does only persist while you still have the client open though. Okay, so all of the existing settings to manage basically the export format, you know, image rate, changing the format type itself. This is all managed when you select the export file in the list. So that screenshot on the right, you can see there's kind of two different levels there. We have the export file, and then under it, there's the various video clips that are associated with it. So when you select the file level, you can change the format, you can change all those other settings. You could even choose to combine exports. So you do that by selecting one of them, holding and dragging it with the mouse, and that'll combine all of the clips associated with the exports together. In terms of changing the cameras and the time range for each of those clips, you just select it at the clip level there as the screenshot shows, and you get all of those options. And now for AVI exports, you can actually define multiple clips for those as well. And really how that works is it'll just stitch together the various segments of video together in order. So you're still only viewing one camera at a time, but you can have the export, the AVI, the resulting AVI have those segments of video all stitched together. And again, you can move clips from one export to another just by holding and dragging. Okay, so a really nice enhancement here too is the ability to export directly from the timeline. So you see the screenshot there at the bottom. When you right click on the timeline, there's a new option there, add export. It works very similar to adding a bookmark from the timeline. When you click on that, you're presented with a dialog where you can you know, customize the time range either by changing the to from fields or by holding or dragging around the brackets on the timeline by default, it'll select all the cameras that are visible on the timeline, and basically you finalize what you're interested in, click OK, and it'll add it to the queue, and then you can go manage the export as I showed you on the previous slides. And then another enhancement related to export is the ability to easily export the video that you previously viewed, that live video that you previously viewed. So, you know, we've received requests for like a call-out monitor type functionality. So, you know, often you'll be watching, an operator will be watching someone, tracking someone from camera to camera, and then after the incident's over, they're tasked with going back and creating an export with all of the related video for the incident. So rather than having to retrace that individual through recorded video, you can now use this new functionality to go and select the live video access events that you did and add them to the export. So you do this from the export UI. There's a new option in the add menu, as you see there. It's called video history. You're presented with a list of all the events or the cameras that you viewed live. We even show you the workstation you did that from in case the user account was used on a couple different workstations. You select the entries you're interested in, and those populate as a new export clip in the queue. Okay, another enhancement we made to ACC 7 was making the user group and access right audit logs more robust. So we're now auditing all changes to users and groups, and we've enhanced the details of what's changed. And really the goal here is to make it as easy as possible to quickly determine who changed something and when they did that. We've also improved our Active Directory integration, and really the intent here is to better meet the needs of large enterprise customers who often have more complicated directory structures. So 3 specific things, we now support nested groups. So what this means is if you had a group operators with 2 subgroups under that called night shift and day shift, and then the individual users under those night shift and day shift groups, by synchronizing over operators, you know, you're basically bringing over the users that are associated with the subgroups as well. We can support multiple forests or domains when there's a trust relationship between the domains, example being Motorola.com and Avigilon.com. And then lastly, we now support all group types. Previously, we only supported global groups. We now support universal and local as well. Okay, an often received request for an enhancement to the site health feature in ACC, so we're now supporting a CSV export. So really this should be a nice enhancement for any administrators or our partners that want to use all of the information that we have in site health and bring that into, you know, additional reports that they may have. So you see that as a new option. You can do PDF and now you can bring it over as a CSV. We've enhanced remote site upgrade. So when we rolled this feature out, it initially only supported the ACC server software. Now it will support any of the components that run server side. So that would be the server, the analytics service web endpoint, the newer generation LPR plugin, and any of the language pack for help file content. And really how this works is you upload an installer, distribute it, it gets distributed to all the servers on the site, you update that component, and then you repeat it for any additional components. So the only limitation is that any components you distribute have to match what the server version is, and that's why the process would be to update the server first. Okay, we've done a couple licensing changes for ACC as well. So for any third-party ONVIF devices that have more than one channel, previously those required a ACC channel license for each channel on the device. We've relaxed that, and now it only requires one channel license for the device itself. So basically the same as our multi-channel devices. And then for ACC ES, we've introduced the ability to add additional channel licenses to these devices. And so this will allow the expansion beyond what comes with the factory licenses. You can now connect additional devices to record, additional cameras to record to an ES device. I do want to clarify though that you still have to obviously observe the overall throughput that the device can handle, and this does not increase the analytics capacity. So it's really only giving you the ability to record additional devices.